The year is 1996. A group of researchers is searching for the wreck of the RMS Titanic, a famous ship that sank 84 years ago. When they find it, they send in a drone to retrieve a safe, hoping to find a large diamond. Sadly, after opening it, they only find money and the drawing of a naked woman wearing the necklace they're seeking. The news of their findings appears on TV and are seen by an old lady called Rose DeWitt Bucator, who calls to tell them that the woman in the picture is her. She and her granddaughter are invited to the ship so she can tell the researchers about her story, and so a flashback begins. In 1912, Rose and her fiancé Cal Hockley and her widowed mother, Ruth DeWitt Bucator, are boarding the Titanic, the largest ship afloat in the time, which many claim to be unsinkable. Rose was calm on the outside, but inside, she was screaming because she didn't want to marry Cal and was only doing it to solve her family's financial problems and maintain their upper-class status. Meanwhile, at a bar near the docks, poor young artist Jack Dawson and his best friend Fabrizio are gambling. Jack is betting everything they have, but the bet is proved to be worth it. They win the game and a pair of tickets to the Titanic. They rush out of the bar and board the ship right before it takes off. Rose has lunch with Cal, Ruth, the shipbuilder Thomas Andrews, the managing director J. Bruce Ismay, and Margaret Molly Brown, a lady considered to be new money and vulgar by others in first class. Molly is supportive of Rose's annoyance by the way Cal and Ruth treat her. Irritated, Ruth leaves the table to grab some air outside, making it possible for Jack to see her from afar while he sketches passengers and hanging out with Fabrizio and their new friend, Tommy Ryan. Rose's life is a series of parties and cotillions, with always the same people and the same mindless chatter. One night, tired of all this, she goes up to the stern railing, but Jack, who had been stargazing nearby, sees her and approaches her to help. He convinces her not to go into the water by telling her how painful freezing water can be, and that if she goes in the water, he will go too. Rose slips on the rails when she is trying to return to the deck. Jack catches her and pulls her up, but her screams call the attention of the sailors, who think Jack is harassing Rose. A moment later, Cal and the Master of Arms are brought over, and they put Jack in handcuffs. Rose cuts in to defend him, saying it all had been an accident. She slipped when she was watching the propellers, and Jack saved her. He's released and invited to dinner with the first class as a reward for his heroic deed. Later in the room, Cal gives Rose a diamond necklace called the Heart of the Ocean as proof of his feelings for her. The next day, Jack and Rose develop a tentative friendship while taking a walk on the deck, talking about their life stories and Jack's work, which Rose thinks is gorgeous. Meanwhile, Ismay is ordering Captain Edward John Smith to force the ship to go faster, which would push the engines. When dinner time comes, Jack borrows a suit from Molly, who has a son that matches his size. He joins Rose at the first-class dining room, where Cal and Ruth try their best to passive-aggressively insult him and bring him down, but Jack has a smart answer ready for all their awkward questions and manages to impress the rest of the table. After dinner is over, he says goodbye to Rose by kissing her hand and uses the chance to slip a piece of paper in her fingers. The message says to meet him by the clock. Rose goes after him and together, they leave for a third-class area below deck, where people are having a more animated party. Rose drinks, dances, and enjoys herself greatly. The next morning, she learns a servant had followed her down there and told Cal about it. Furious, he tosses the table they're having breakfast at and threatens her for not honoring her fiancé. Afterward, Ruth forbids her from seeing Jack again. Later, when Jack tries to reach Rose, he's sent away by the servants, so he sneaks in first class by climbing the railings at the deck and finds Rose talking to the captain, who is receiving the news of icebergs being in the area, and Andrews, who admits the ship has fewer lifeboats than it should. Jack drags Rose away from the conversation and into an empty room to tell her that while he understands their class difference will make it tough for them, and he doesn't have much to offer, he still wants to be with her. But Rose turns him down and leaves after telling him not to seek her anymore. When she gets stuck in another boring afternoon of mindless chatter, she changes her mind. She seeks Jack on deck, and they have their first kiss while standing on the rails. Afterward, Rose takes him back to her room, where she shows Jack her art collection and asks him to make a sketch of her wearing only the diamond necklace. Jack fulfills her wishes and draws her, which the old Rose in the present calls the most erotic experience in her life. The drawing is put in the safe together with the diamond and a note from Rose to Cal. Cal sends a servant to find Rose, so she and Jack have to run away into third class to lose him. He continues to chase them though, so they sneak into the engine room and then the cargo hold. They find a car there, and after playing around in it, they make love inside. When they make it back to the deck, Rose tells Jack that when they arrive in America, she'll leave with him. Cal finds a note Rose left for him in the safe saying the drawing is a way for him to keep both her and the diamond locked inside. Furious, he ideates a plan and sends servants to find her. Meanwhile, sailors in the crow's nest see they're approaching an iceberg and alert the crew. Then they try to make the ship turn and manage to avoid a full front collision, but it is still too large to dodge it fully, so the iceberg hits its side, breaking its hull and allowing water to start flooding in. The captain sends people to repair it and decides not to tell the passengers just yet. Jack and Rose see the collision and decide to warn her family. When they make it to her room, the servants slip the diamond into Jack's pocket according to Cal's plan. He's already waiting for them with the Master of Arms, who searches Jack and finds the necklace, so he arrests him and confines him to his office. Andrews tells Ismay and the captain the ship only has an hour or so left before sinking. Coming to terms with the truth, the captain sends the sailors to get people ready. He also goes to the communications room to send a distress signal. The nearest ship that responds will only be able to arrive in 4 hours. The first-class passengers are sent to wait in the dining room and put on life jackets. Rose approaches Andrews and asks him for the truth. He confirms her fears. He asks her not to tell anybody because they don't want people to panic and urges her to go to the boats. First-class women and children are being sent out first. Molly and Ruth board a boat and ask Rose to join them, but she says goodbye to her mom and goes in search of Jack. Cal tries to stop her, but Rose tells him she'd rather be Jack's tart than Cal's wife and spits at him as Jack taught her. Cal lets go of her and stares with disbelief. Water is reaching the room Jack's at, but he can't leave because he's handcuffed to a pipe. Rose finds him by following directions given to her by a helpful Andrews and tries to free him, but the keys aren't anywhere. She leaves the room and tries to find help. The only person left around is a sailor that refuses to go with her, so she decides to break an emergency box and grab the fire axe, which she takes back to the office while dangerously walking through high waters and uses it to shatter the chains of the handcuffs. They leave the room and find the hallway flooded, so they must find a different way out. They end up smashing a door open to make it to the upper floor. The boats are being sent with fewer people than they are capable of carrying, so Andrew scolds the sailors and orders them to fill them to the max. Cal hears about a boat that is allowing first-class men to board and intends on getting on it, but first, he wants some insurance, so he goes back to Rose's room and retrieves some money and the necklace from the safe, hiding it in his jacket. Meanwhile, the third-class passengers are being held behind closed gates. When they open them to get the women and children out, the men try to escape as well, but they're punched and pushed back. A sailor even threatens them with a gun. Rose and Jack arrive and see the situation, so after reuniting with Fabrizio and Tommy, the 4 of them go looking for another exit. The gates are closed in other areas as well, so the 3 men grab a bench and use it to hit the gates and force them open, allowing them to escape. Only a few boats are left, and people are starting to panic, jumping on already crowded boats and cutting off the ropes before they are lowered. Cal pays off a sailor to get him a spot on the boat, but when his turn comes, he decides to go back for Rose, who he finds arguing with Jack because she doesn't want to leave on a boat without him. Cal gives her his coat and promises her he'll get Jack on a different boat with him, so she accepts and boards on a boat, while Cal tells Jack he lied and he won't take him with him. As the boat is lowered, Rose can't stop staring at Jack and realizes she can't do this without him, so she jumps back on board. Jack goes after her and they reunite at the clock. Cal sees them and gets furious. He steals a gun from his servant and chases them through the ship as he shoots. He gives up, however, when he runs out of bullets and the couple crosses an area too flooded for him to bother. A bitter laugh escapes him when he realizes Rose has his coat and therefore the diamond as well. Jack and Rose hide in the lower area where they find a crying kid and his father. They aren't capable of helping them because a powerful wave breaks through and takes them with it. As the couple runs away, the wave pushes them against the locked gates, so they swim towards the stairs where they find yet another pair of locked doors. A waiter happens to run by and accepts to open the gate for them, but he drops the keys as power starts to fail, so he leaves. Jack goes underwater to retrieve the keys, and after a few failed attempts, unlocks the door, allowing them to escape and climb the rest of the stairs into the upper area. One of the sailors is getting desperate under pressure. He throws Cal's money in his face, canceling their deal, and starts shooting his gun to keep people away from the boat, accidentally killing Tommy.
Captain Edward John Smith, unable to cope with this, he uses his gun to end things.
Cal manages to get on a different boat by grabbing a lost child and claiming to be the father. Still running through the ship, Jack and Rose find Andrews, who has accepted to go down with the ship he built, so he gives Rose his life jacket. He isn't the only one accepting his fate. Many families get on their beds to wait for the water to take them. The musicians keep on playing music, and the captain goes to await his end at the ship's bridge. One of the ends of the ship is already sinking, so people, including Jack and Rose, start running towards the opposite end. One of the ship's funnels breaks and crashes into the water, crushing Fabrizio and several other passengers to death. As passengers start falling, the upended ship breaks in half. The bow section sinks instantly, while the remaining stern stays up and still for a moment before it slowly starts sinking as well. Jack and Rose, who have been holding onto the rails all this time, hold their breath as they dive in. The current takes Jack away from Rose, who resurfaces among hundreds of desperate floating passengers. As a man pushes her down and almost drowns her, Jack finds her and takes her away from the crowd. They find a wooden panel buoyant enough for one person, and Jack helps her climb onto it while he stays in the freezing water. There's a sailor floating nearby that keeps blowing his whistle and yelling at the boats to turn back, but at the boats, nobody wants to return, even after Molly calls him out and scolds him for it. However, as the boats come together and are tied to each other, one of the officers thinks there is a chance and transfers the passengers of his boat to the others so he can go back. Jack and Rose wait while holding hands. Rose tells Jack she loves him, but Jack refuses to accept a goodbye. He tells her winning the tickets is the best thing that's ever happened to him and makes her promise she'll survive. Rose gives him his word. A boat finally arrives near them, and when Rose sees it, she tries to wake Jack up, but he's already passed away from hypothermia. Thinking everyone is dead, the boat starts to leave, so Rose gets off the wooden panel and swims towards the sailor's body to take his whistle and blow it, getting the attention of the officers in the boat. They go back and rescue her. Back in the present, Rose finishes telling the researchers her story. The boat that rescued her was the only one that had returned, and they saved only 6 people, including her, out of hundreds. All they could do after that was wait. Eventually they were found by the RMS Carpathia. Cal had searched for her, but she avoided him and never saw him again. When she arrived in the USA, she told the officer her name was Rose Dawson. The researchers tell her there were no records of Jack. Rose replies he only lives in her memory. Sometime later, after the head researcher gives up on his search for the diamond, we see Rose on deck revealing she still has the necklace, but she drops it into the water before returning to her room. All her photographs show she lived a life full of freedom and adventure. The film ends with Rose going to her bed and reuniting with Jack in her dreams, leaving it up to the audience to decide if she is just sleeping or has passed away. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.